so alive and controlling in touch. Lucy, take me away. Lucy, take me away. Lucy, take me away. Lucy, take me away. And the colors so vivid and the lights so bright, so lost and confused, I knew something's not right. As I look in the distance, an angel.
Hello everyone, Scott Leuthold here with 4XPEDITION. Welcome back to another episode on our YouTube and Facebook channel. Today I'm coming to you from the north slope of the San Francisco Peaks, north of Flagstaff, Arizona, off of Forest Road 151. There's a number of really great spots I like to camp back here that there aren't a lot of people and you can find some solitude. It's just a beautiful place to be this time of the year. There's a lot of storms that come across the San Francisco Peaks this time of the year. There are a lot of storms going on down in Phoenix also. It is monsoon season down there, but it also is a little bit hot, so I like to come up here and get out of the heat. And if I can come across a couple rainstorms and just hang out in the rain up here under the canopy of my rooftop tent, I really enjoy that. I do plan on filming weekend vlogs from time to time like I've done in the last couple of weekends, because I do believe that the content I share in these episodes is valuable to people who are getting into adventure or even people who are expeditioners. But I don't plan on doing this every single weekend. I do have some adventures that I'm starting to organize that I'll be doing some filming on that I'll talk about later on in this episode. I do plan on being up here until tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. I'll be getting up early tomorrow morning and packing up my things and heading into Flagstaff to spend a little bit of time with my good friend Kelly McCabe, who owns a wonderful, wonderful shop downtown Flagstaff called Sacred RITES. And Sacred RITES sells beautiful instruments from all over the world. Kelly's got a really interesting background. He spent a number of years as a monk in India. And he brought a lot of those traditions back here to the United States and opened up Sacred RITES many, many years ago. And then he and his wife founded a temple upstairs from Sacred RITES called the Temple of the Divine Mother, and he does a lot of traditional Indian ceremonies up there, and one of them that he hosts when he is in town. He and his wife travel around the world a lot. They just got back from South America, and they'll be at the temple tomorrow morning hosting a puja, and it's a beautiful ceremony. If you ever get an opportunity to come through Flagstaff on a Sunday morning, stop in and attend the puja. It's pretty much available to anyone. You go up there into the temple and do some meditating and experience that with he and his wife, which is really beautiful. And then after that, I'll be spending a little bit of time with a woman named Alex that I met up here about a month ago. She provides THETA healing sessions, and she did a THETA healing session on me. I'd never done that before. And I had some pain in my shoulder, and she helped alleviate that pain, believe it or not. So I'll be spending a little bit of time with her again to see what she can do to help improve my body even more. And right now it looks like it's starting to rain a little bit, which is one of the reasons I came up here. So I'll be enjoying that, and hopefully I'll be able to share with you a really nice downpour. And maybe I'll be able to sleep in a nice rainstorm this evening. But it's a beautiful, beautiful time to be up here, and if you get a chance to come to Flagstaff in the summertime, definitely do so. I've had a couple of hunters come through my camp, bow hunters. It is bow hunting season, so you know, you do have to pay attention to that. But I've had 2 bow hunters come through my camp. I actually thought about inviting one of them to hang out with me for a little while and have some coffee and talk about hunting, but just didn't get around to it. I was just getting up in the morning when they came through. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. Looks like it's starting to calm down a little bit. So I think one of the things worth mentioning about this iKamper is that this particular model sleeps 4 people. Now it's fairly tight if you sleep 4 people. I usually max out at 2 up here, but when I'm up here by myself, this is an incredibly large space, and I'm gonna see if I can demonstrate. I'm putting the camera as far back in one corner as I possibly can, and I want to show you how far away I can get from the camera. So as you can see, I'm in the far back corner of this rooftop tent, and it is very, very spacious. Depending on, I try to level off the vehicle every time I camp, but depending on the angle, if there is a slight angle, I might sleep the long way, front to back of the car. But it is more than wide enough to sleep side to side as well, and actually the side to side sleeping is how you're supposed to be able to fit 4 people. But as you can see here, I'm really far back here, and if you had 2 people up here, or even 3 people, you could totally relax up here in a rainstorm. There's plenty of light. There's a nice skylight here, some nice side windows. It's very bright in here during the day, but I can close up all the windows and it's pitch black up here. Even this morning when I woke up, I couldn't even tell that it was daylight outside because it was so dark in here until I opened up the roof skylight and saw that it was morning. But a really, really nice place for a group of people to hang out in a rainstorm if they want to just get comfortable, relax, play a game, play some cards, or do whatever up here. Your kids can come up here and play some cards or play some games while you're outside cooking or doing whatever out there underneath the very large awning that I purchased to come along with this rooftop tent. And then another thing probably worth mentioning is that this unit it's very modular. You can take off the fly that goes over the entire tent and literally sleep with just a screen tent. They have a separate screen tent that you can zip right in. You have to purchase that separately, but I could literally sleep completely out under the stars and in the elements if I knew it wasn't going to be raining out with just a screen tent. I can take off the fly and just expose the regular tent. I've got the zip-on awning, and then they also have, for a colder season, they also have an interior thermal liner that you can zip on the inside. So this thing is really quite amazing compared to a lot of rooftop tents that are out there. There's a lot of great companies that make rooftop tents that have been making them for a long time, and iKamper came along and decided to create something a little bit different. And so far I have to say that I'm pretty impressed compared to my last rooftop tent, which my last rooftop tent was very durable. It withstood the rain very well, but it didn't have a lot of options. There weren't a lot of modular features. that come along with this iKamper. So I would say that even though it's a fairly expensive investment, it's well worth it if you're looking for a rooftop tent, especially a hard shell rooftop tent like this one is. So those of you that are interested in buying an iKamper, one of the things you might want to consider is the different accessories that they sell with the product. And this here is both a shoe rack and for my purposes I use it for a clothing rack. And what I really like about it is that you can zip it completely shut. So when you're at home, you can literally stuff all of your clothing right in this thing. And what's really cool is that it rolls up and cinches down, and there are clips here, so I can literally take all my clothing almost like a little duffel bag and put it inside there and put that in my car. And then when I get to my camp area, they have these little hooks up here. You just take it up, hook it up there, let go of the clips, unzip, you can roll this up, hook it on there, and I have access to all my clothing very easily, and I can still put a pair of shoes down here. So when I climb up the ladder, if I want to take my shoes off, I can put them right in here. And as I've told you all before, I've got a pair of little slippers that I carry around when I go on these trips, and the bottoms have a solid rubber surface so I can wear them outside. So a lot of times in the morning I'll get up and I'll just wear my slippers around, and when I want to go for a hike or something like that, I can switch on to my boots or shoes that are going to be right in here. It's a really nice organizer for your clothing. You know, I mentioned before that I wrote a book called Rediscovering Your Divine Music, Finding Harmony and Balance Through Inner Peace. I wrote that and published it back in 2011. And then shortly thereafter, I wrote a subsequent e-course, 28-day e-course called 28 Ways to Rediscover Your Divine Music. And when I use the term divine music, I'm referring to a harmony that we experience out in nature, and that's predominantly I'm referring to the 432 hertz frequency that everything in nature vibrates at. And when we're out in nature, we feel something generally, and I've mentioned this before. And I do have one subscriber named Tom that I've sent the book and e-course off to. Thanks so much, Tom, for becoming a member and subscribing to the 4XPEDITION channel and helping support the 4XPEDITION initiative. I really appreciate that, man. But if anybody else is interested in the e-course and wants to reconnect with nature, would like some help in a step-by-step process, I'm certainly more than happy to point you in the right direction. But it's just a beautiful experience being out here in nature and feeling the connection with it and the life force that's out here. So I, for one, encourage people to get out into nature more and experience it and discover the harmony that they can feel out here, and in a sense, understand why it's so important to create a sustainable a sustainable society so that we can continue to be humans on this planet. Well, I got what I asked for. It is pouring like cats and dogs. And if there's ever going to be a good test for this rooftop tent, now's the time. I've been looking around to see if there's any leaks. The main tent doesn't have any leaks so far that I can tell. However, when I look out at the awning, there are a couple of spots where water's seeping through the awning. And I might have to do a little bit of sealing work to make sure that this awning stays completely watertight, because I don't want my stuff to get all wet that's out there underneath. All right, well, unfortunately I discovered a little bit of a roof leak, which, you know, sometimes bound to happen with something so complex as this particular type of rooftop tent. It looks like maybe I just need to do a little bit of sealing work. Not too big of a deal. If you take a look here, I just unzipped the roof window, which has a thick canvas window. Then there's a screen. But if you take that off, this is open to the sky. And what I'm touching right here, it's actually a rain fly that has a skylight. But if you look in here, there's a couple little spots here where there's zippers that connect to the hard shell, and there's a little bit of water leakage coming down. You can see right here, see? There's some water that just dripped down right there. And I'm guessing it's coming from way over there. I can see it. I'll have to do a little bit of patchwork. So I'm choosing to sit in the car right now because the lightning and thunder has been striking pretty suddenly, and a little bit too close for my comfort. So I'm going to sit in the car. My dog's also very afraid of lightning and thunder, so she's sitting in the car here with me. But I thought it'd be really interesting to have a conversation with you, talking a little bit about destination travel, choosing a destination, and planning an expedition. These little weekend vlogs that I'm posting to our channel, I really find are valuable little tidbits of content that I'd like to continue to share. But I'm sure all of you like to come to our channel to see some of the adventures that I'm going on. And I do have some other adventures coming up that I've got somewhat planned. A little bit of it is in the cursory stages, but it's interesting to talk about what kind of destinations each of you might have in mind, as well as what I've got in mind. And I've got some major epic journeys that I'd like to embark on that I'm starting to plan, including possibly a backpacking trip across New Zealand, some closer trips, including a stand-up paddleboard multi-day paddling expedition down the Black Canyon of the Colorado River, which I've done before via canoe and kayak. And then, you know, I've gone places in the past. I've spent a lot of time traveling and backpacking around Central and South America. I've traversed the Amazon jungle, Amazon basin of Brazil. I've spent a lot of time in Belize and done a lot of island hopping off the coast of Belize. I've backpacked through the ancient Mayan city of TIKAL in Guatemala. I've spent time backpacking the Dolomites of Italy. And I'd like to go back to Europe and spend more time in Austria and Switzerland. This fall, I may be going to Scotland sometime in November. As many of you know, my friend Stuart Mitchell passed away, and he's a world-renowned classical composer. One of the things he's best known for is he and his father's discoveries of the cymatic patterns in the music on the ceiling of ROSSLYN Chapel. So what I've heard is that they may be having a concert at ROSSLYN with Stuart's music, and I may fly to Scotland to attend that. You know, the weekend getaways this time of the year are really fantastic when you come up to Flagstaff in northern Arizona, places like southwestern Colorado, northern New Mexico, because this time of the year there's a lot of thunderstorms, and that's one of the reasons I'm sitting in the car right now. Down in Phoenix, it's pretty hot. We do have thunderstorms this time of the year. It is monsoon season, so we'll get not only monsoons, but we'll also get haboobs, which are the major dust storms where you can't even see 10 feet in front of yourself through the dust in some occasions. I do have some local trips planned. I'd like to spend some time up at Zion, maybe do a through hike through the Zion Narrows. I also would like to spend some time up in the White Mountains of Arizona and north central eastern Arizona along the New Mexico border. There's some really nice mountain ranges over there. One of my favorite hikes up there is Mount Baldy. I also like to maybe do a little bit of fishing down by the Blue River or the Black River. There have been some fires through those areas, but it's still a really wonderful place to spend some time. But when you're planning on taking an epic adventure somewhere, you know, there's a lot of logistical planning that has to go into it. I took my son on a really fantastic 2-week backpacking trip through Costa Rica when he was 12 years old. It was just the two of us. I did a lot of logistical planning way in advance of that trip. There are trips that I like to take, like to Belize, where I only plan the very first day, and then beyond that, everything is just random. Whatever happens, happens. And I do like to get the very first night scheduled somewhere so I know where I'm landing. And then after that, it's pretty random and free form. And I really like to travel that way. I prefer to travel that way, to be honest. But there are experiences where, like if I'm taking my 12-year-old son, I'd like to have things planned out a little bit more, especially if it's a place I've never been. Costa Rica is pretty easy to get around. You can actually rent a car there, or you can take shuttle buses, or you can take puddle jumper airplanes. It's really pretty easy to get around. There's there's the central city of San Jose, which is pretty easy to get into, and from there you can go and do a lot of wonderful things. So I really encourage people to take a trip to Costa Rica. I really encourage people to take trips to Belize. Belize is super inexpensive. I've spent 2 weeks in Belize in the past and spent, including airfare, $800. And I did all sorts of fantastic things there. And if you have any questions, you want an itinerary, I'd be more than happy to share an itinerary with you for Belize. But when you're trying to plan a trip to somewhere like New Zealand, you do have to look really far in advance, because you have to get permits for a lot of places you'd like to backpack. You have to make sure that when you're doing through hikes, there's adequate accommodations. They don't let you do much camping. You have to stay in little hostels along the trail. And in order to schedule that, you really have to do so about 6 to 8 months in advance. But planning a trip to Black Canyon, for instance, I have to buy a permit. And the last time I went there, they didn't have permits. And usually the put-in is right below Hoover Dam, and you take that many miles downstream to a place called Willow Beach. And along the way, there's lots of hot springs on either side of the river. On one side of the river is Nevada, and the other side is Arizona. And there's great beaches to camp along the river, and as I said, there's a lot of wonderful hot springs. But in order to plan a trip there, you have to look and see if there's available permits. That's really the first step in the process: getting your permits, figuring out roughly where you're going to stay, how far you're going to travel. One of the things I don't really like to do is pack way too much into a trip. I don't want to come home from my trip and feel like I need a vacation from my vacation. So I do like to have some down days, some relaxation days, and then, try to fit in as many wonderful things as I can outside of those down days. And I also like to make sure that when I come back from a vacation, I come back on Saturday. I don't come back on Sunday. I come back on Saturday. I can sleep in Sunday morning. I can get up and do my laundry. I can relax and enjoy the Sunday before I have to go back to work. So definitely something to take into consideration when you're planning your travel adventures. Well, we got ourselves a beautiful sunny morning. I asked for a sunny morning because the day you're leaving, if it's been raining the night before, then your rooftop tent is going to be all wet, and then you got to close it up wet. And the real trouble with having a rooftop tent on top of your vehicle, if you don't have a place to take it off every time you get home, and maybe you know, lift it up inside of a garage on some kind of a hoist or something like that. But if you have to leave it on top of your vehicle and you've got to commute with the vehicle the next day, you really come across a problem. The problem is that you need to be able to open this up when you get home and air it out. It needs a certain amount of time to get the moisture out of it, and if you've got to get on the highway the next morning, you're going to have to close it up again. If you go to the office, you might not be able to open it up where your office is located to let it continue to air out. So that's something to consider when you're buying a rooftop tent, if you're thinking about putting it on top of a vehicle that you're going to drive and commute with. When I had my adventure trailer, it was a lot easier. I could come back from my adventures with the Rubicon, lift the Maggiolina tent up, open it up, and let it air out for a whole day before I closed it back up. And this scenario is not ideal for rainy situations. Fortunately, this morning the sun's out and the sun is hitting the top of the rooftop tent. I already took the awning down and that was dry, fortunately. The inside of the rooftop tent gets a little bit of moisture from condensation on the plastic windows. So I've got the screens open, gonna air that out, and hopefully before I leave while I'm eating my breakfast here, it'll be pretty good. And then when I get home, I'll open it up for the evening. Hopefully there's no rain down in the valley. If it's a clear day, clear skies, I'll leave it open all night long and let it air out overnight and then close it up to go to work the next morning. So think about that when you're looking at rooftop tents. So most of you probably don't know that I've got a big plan for my life that I've been moving toward for the past year or so. Now that my son's graduated high school and I have more freedom to focus on some of the things that are meaningful to me outside of raising him. One of the things I did, of course, as you already know, is I sold my Jeep and adventure trailer. I'm buying a 4x4 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, and I'll be building that out into an adventure vehicle, probably get the 170, the longer version. Just make it a real comfortable living space, and then spend part of my time living in that. Even though I have companies that I run, probably work remotely part of the time and live in that Sprinter. And one of the things I've done is, over the last couple of years, I've put together a Google map of all of the towns around the west and a couple in the north Midwest and Northwest, little towns that I want to go check out. And my ultimate goal is to buy a piece of land. I'd love to buy somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 acres and then build a cabin on it, and then eventually build some kind of a facility on it that I can run both 4XPEDITION and some of my other ventures from, and host workshops, have a prototyping facility in there to develop prototype outdoor products, things like that. My goal is to drive around in the Sprinter van and spend some time in a lot of small towns, find a place that I feel like resonates with me, and then look to buy a piece of land. I've got a lot of different steps that I've been moving on along the way, and I've got a couple of those steps done. Some big ones will be done by the end of September, and then the biggest one, of course, coming up would be to build out a Sprinter camper van. That's the goal. Whoa. Look at that piece. Man, that smells good. Wish I had smell-o-vision. I'd like for you to smell that. They're like little nuggets of gold. Look at that. Nice big chunks there. Climbed up here and I took off the front part so I can stand up here and do a little bit of wiping off of the outside of the tent so that when I close it up it's not going to be so moist in there. And I was trying to figure out why I might have had some indoor leakage. And first of all, this piece here was tucked up in here. I noticed this morning in a couple spots. And so you might want to make sure that that's fully pulled out. But I have to say, I mean, the zippers are way back up in there, so I don't think it was coming from the zippers, although as I pull this down, there is water coming out from up in there. I don't think that that's probably where it was leaking. I have a tendency to believe that it was leaking along this seam here, so maybe it just needs some reinforcement. Let's see over here. Anyway, it's pretty wet through here. I have a feeling that a lot of it was leaking in through this seam here. I don't think it was coming from under here. But, you know, I can always test that again another time. Well, I got on the iKamper community page on Facebook and I posted a little information about the leaking I had this last night on this tent, but most people that commented, or actually everybody that commented, said they haven't had any leaking problems whatsoever. So I don't know, maybe it's just maybe it's a matter of that flap issue or something like that, but I'll have to pay closer attention to that and hopefully figure out what the problem is. It's a pretty complex tent, so you know, you're gonna have a little bit of leakage here and there every once in a while if you've got a ton of seams like this thing has, so I'm not going to jump to any conclusions and get all upset about it. But you know, when you're spending the kind of money you're spending on a tent like this, you really shouldn't have these kind of problems. Some people have asked whether I'm concerned about getting this iKamper stolen, but to be honest, I'm really not. I mean, they're locked shut, so you can't really get inside them unless somebody cuts this, but I believe there's cables inside here. I mean, it's certainly something you could break into if you really, really wanted to, but these are locked on. And then over here, you'll notice that I've got a lock here that locks the roof tent to my rack. And then of course you notice that my rack is locked onto the car. So it's all pretty secure. I mean, somebody could steal it if they really, really wanted to and I was away from the vehicle for long enough. But for the most part, I'm not really all that concerned about it. I really don't think that too many people are gonna take the time to try to steal it off the car. It's pretty heavy anyway. It needs a couple of people to lift it off. So like I said, I'm not all that concerned about it. Everyone, I hope you liked that episode. It's good timing, around 10 o'clock. I have to be into Flagstaff around 11 o'clock to spend some time with Kelly. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It was short and sweet, and hopefully I shared some good information with you. I'd love it if you'd share with me some feedback on some of the adventures that you're taking or some of the things that you've done to inspire other people that watch this video. Until the next video, take care.